view is the same. If you're a student, you've still got to live on your wage, and actually what you save during your holidays, you've got to live on all year. I've been through that experience, I remember it well. The second thing is with the working for families. I was part of a government that brought in working for families, but I don't think the intention was that this simply be that central government or the taxpayer should subsidise us because we don't pay our workers well enough. There will be some marginal impact on working for families. The team will be working through to try to find out what that exact impact will be. But I kind of, the downside of working for families is we're actually saying to employers, you can pay people less than what it costs for those people to live on, and the taxpayer will pick up the balance. Well, the taxpayer and the ratepayer are actually the same person, so we're just paying a fair wage to people for the work they do. But the upside of that too is we will expect people to upskill. 400 librarians in this package that are paid less than the living wage. They will be upskilled. That'll be good for them. It'll be good for the ratepayer. So we've also taken into account the flow-on effect in terms of increasing productivity, reducing staff turnover, recruiting better, more competent people. There are a lot of benefits in that as well.
So can I just a supplementary question, Mr. Chairman? So one is, did you speak to the CEOs of the CCOs who actually employ those people? We don't. And will we be passing that increase to them, or do you expect the CCOs to find that money themselves, given that they are the people that employ those workers?
Yeah, they'll be finding that money themselves. I haven't spoken personally to the CEOs, but I'm sure the council staff has, and they were well aware of this proposal.
And just as further follow-up, Councillor Cooper, I think I'm heading a subcommittee that's going to be looking into this, and I will give you the assurance that we'll be looking for productivity gains through this, so with staff training and skills metrics and that, if we can lower staff turnover, that is a huge saving in itself, because the cost of replacing staff is usually can be up to 30 or 40% of an annual salary. So if we can drop turnover in certain areas, that's going to give returns in itself.
So has extra training been factored into the budgets? Or do we have to find that from somewhere as well?
I think this is a work in progress. Well, I think all of this is going to be found within budgets. As simple as that. I thought you'd be quite keen on us trying to go for those efficiencies.
I think in regard to the librarians,
but I have my own thoughts. Thank you,
Councillor. Just in regard to the librarians, I think that's already factored in. And the other thing that we have to factor in is that the court case on pay equity and the government's acceptance of that means that some of those costs would have to be incurred probably after some delay anyway, and it's the right thing to do from a pay equity as well as a living wage perspective. But we will be required to do that, and we shouldn't be waiting until we're forced. We should be saying it is the right thing to do. Let's do it as soon as we can.
Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A very direct question for you, Mr. Mayor. Just first of all, my apologies for lateness and for missing your introductory speech. Sorry about that, but I have read the paper.
I can send you a copy.
Thank you. Yeah, I've read it very carefully. So there's two specific questions for you. One I'm quite grumpy about, but I'll start off with the first one. The first one's just around the. First of all, Rodney would be supportive of your initiatives around revenue generation through user pays. So very supportive of those concepts, Mr. Mayor. How a fuel tax might be distributed is of particular interest in terms of when that revenue is collected. On what formula will it be distributed back to the areas of Auckland? I bring that up because obviously people in Rodney drive large kilometres, and it's just on.
I think I know the thinking behind what you're asking, Councillor.
Yeah, thank you. So that was the first question around the formula. If we could get some detail at that soon, distribution. But what the grumpiness is around, and Councillor Simpson alluded to it, is the cost savings, Mr. Mayor. Mm-hmm. The figures that we haven't got a lot of detail yet, but it looks like around about a maximum of 1% savings. And I would be calling for you, and this is my question I guess, calling for you to look at reworking to build in at least a 10% cost saving rather than a 1%, Mr Mayor. So that's my question to you. Could you do that?
Yeah, I'm really sorry to make the councillor grumpy, particularly since it's his birthday. Best wishes for your birthday, councillor.
Yeah, thank you.
On the first one, thanks for your support around the user pays concept. Look, you know better than anybody else in this room the sheer amount of work that needs to be done in Rodney, particularly over unsealed roads. And if we don't have the money, we can't do it. So we have to find the revenue, and you're engaged with that and you understand the need for that. And I think the people in your ward likewise. In terms of the cost savings, I think you'll see some significant cost savings in areas including around staffing and things like, I mentioned the 800 strong car fleet that we operate, which I think is much bigger than what we need. I've made some savings personally in that regard. We will be looking for those savings. We'll be looking for savings, and it won't be just this year. We'll be looking for savings on an ongoing basis, because that's what a top performing organisation has to do, and the Chief Executive Officer is well aware of that and is embarking on that. The actual figures of savings, we'll probably have a clearer picture when we've done further work on that, but we've had 3.5 to 4 weeks to work on this, as well as other priorities. I think we've made huge progress in this, but there is still work to do, and I'm sure you and Councillor Simpson will be part of that work in assisting us to look at areas of efficiency savings, cutting waste, cutting duplication, the sort of things we all talked about during the campaign.
Thank you for your answer, Mr Mayor. I'll probably just keep at you with the, with the
I'll be disappointed if you don't, Councillor.
Okay, thank you.
So I have 4 people still. I have Councillor Mike Lee, Councillor Denise Lee, and then Councillor Casey and Councillor Cashmore. So Councillor Mike Lee.
Yep. Congratulations, Mr Mayor, especially on the steps towards a living wage and also dealing with homelessness. In terms of the visitor levy, I have to say I would be much more comfortable if we first tackled costs inside the council and got them under control, and in the CCOs, and then, if required, looked at supplementary funding from rates. I'm a little bit concerned about a targeted rate that certainly targets certain ratepayers, but that is not targeted at where the money will be spent is not clearly targeted. I think that needs to be worked on, but I would much prefer a rigorous audit of this council's cost and the CCO's cost by independent people, and I mean independent, before we looked at putting extra rates on anyone at this stage. So that's my concerns. I do have a question, and it's a technical question. How much per annum does the temporary transport levy draw in per annum?
It's about 60 million, Councillor.
Thank you.
Councillor Lee, just to quite clear, the levy on the visitor levy, that would actually go back to AT to use specifically to promote events and tourism. So that is already identified. What we then would allow us to do is not give them 30 million, which we can apply somewhere else, which is not identified where it will go, but we're quite clear that levy is actually targeted to go back to actually help the industry itself.
If I can just make one other point, because I listened very closely, Councillor Lee, to your comments yesterday. One of the advantages of the targeted rate is that the ratepayers in many cases will be people sitting on the land waiting for the increase to go up, developers with no incentive to actually develop the land, and this is partly designed to tackle that problem of land banking, which I think you referred to quite rightly yesterday.
I'm more than happy with that, but I make the point, let's get our own house in order before we move on supplementary rating. That's my feeling. And that will be an incentive to get our house in order.
Councillor Denise Lee.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Can I just ask a question? Is it standard practice and recommendation C that we agree for items 1 through 13, to go into our consultation document. I thought that's what the December 13th and 15th meetings, especially the governing body meeting, where we actually do agree on consultation items. And one of the reasons I ask that, because we're noting, but then if we agree to that today, then yes, they all go in the consultation document. So what are we doing on the 13th and the 15th? So, and the reason I ask for that is just timing around, my next question would be the actual design of the visitor levy and implementation and timing of that. And given that there are discussions occurring in the media and apparently with you, Mr. Mayor, and the Prime Minister in the next couple of days around a nationwide possible strategy. It's all very nebulous. But if there were possibilities of some sort of hybrid scheme that shows that we're putting our own skin in the game and they could too, but it's a nationwide, look, who knows what it could be. What would the timing be for us agreeing to C3, leaving scope open for what actually does go out for public consultation?
If I can address that.
Just through the chair, I'm going to actually ask the mayor if he's willing to actually change the word agree to note, and it would say note that the annual plan 2017-18 public consultation document may include the following documents.
That's better.
Yep.
That would take.
Yep. That would take care of your first issue. But
following items pending the meeting,
yeah,
the 13th of December.
Yeah. These are the list of things there are issues that council advises me need to go into the council document. I'm happy for us to note that because we're not making decisions today, and if you're more comfortable with that wording, I'm happy to change it accordingly. On the second thing with the visitor levy, I know the government, and it was announced actually after we made our announcement, is looking at something similar, and I suspect the Prime Minister thinks, gosh, government should have got in first on this one, but we can't sit back and wait for something that the government might or might not do. But I will be having discussions with the Prime Minister, and you know we're not setting out to be in competition with the government, we're setting out to work alongside them. But a visitor levy that took money from people visiting Auckland but didn't reinvest it in Auckland would obviously not be much help to us. And none of us around this table can sit back and do nothing while we need this revenue. And the government would be in an unusual situation if it was saying to us all the time, we want you to spend more money on these things, but we won't let you raise the money. And I think the government will be quite sympathetic to what we're trying to do, which is to work within the powers that we have to raise money without putting all of the money back on the ratepayer every time. So I think philosophically, the government should be quite supportive of this. In fact, the Prime Minister wasn't saying a visitor levy is a bad idea. He was saying it may be such a good idea that I'd like to do it right across the country. But I don't know what he has in mind. We don't know what's in the report. It may be an airport. It may be something on the, clipping the ticket on the airline ticket and adding a percentage. But we still have this need. And this need is exacerbated by the huge growth. We've got 1 million extra commercial tourist nights in the city over the last 5 years. That puts pressure on us. And most Aucklanders that I've talked to, and you read the letters to the editor in the paper today, think that it's not a bad idea if the visitors contribute something towards that cost. Not so high that it would deter them from coming here, but a small amount that would make it easier for us to adjust to the pressures that they're putting on us.
And just Councillor Lee, just remind you, remember we tasked AT to look into this some years ago, and they've given us interim reports, but it'd be fair enough to say we have found they have dragged their feet on this, and that so this is giving it a good push. This is because it hasn't been coming back, they have not been coming back with advice as quickly as we would have liked. So have Councillor Casey has spoken. Councillor I've got Councillor Cashmore, Councillor Quacks, and then yourself as a second.
And then I really have to get away, Mr. Chairman.
So, with your indulgence, Chairman,